Hello, everybody. It is Thursday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Joined for our weekly chat with Post-Gazette sports columnist Jason Mackey. Jason, we got a lot to get into this week. Steelers OTAs start next Tuesday. Aaron Rodgers, as of this recording, still has not signed with the Steelers. Should that be a red line for Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin in the front office, or should they continue to show patience? How much of an impact do OTAs really make for a 41-year-old quarterback? We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss the practical difference between DK Metcalf and George Pickens as the Steelers' number one receiver and maybe their biggest remaining weakness. Later in the show, we're going to talk about the Penguins, their continued coaching search, Mitch Love's candidacy, and Sidney Crosby's potential impact. And then in our third segment on our Pirates YouTube channel, we'll be talking about Ben Cherington's future, any potential moves he might have left to make, and the Paul Skeens trade chatter that seems to be bubbling up around the country. Before we get into all of that, I want to discuss our sponsor today. It's Edgar Snyder & Associates. Law firms come and go, but what law firm has been here in Western PA fighting for injury victims for more than 40 years? It's Edgar Snyder & Associates. What firm has a staff of over 130 people who live and work here? It's Edgar Snyder & Associates. Law firms come and go, but Edgar Snyder & Associates is a name that you can always trust. So remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. If you've been hurt in an accident, call them at 1-800-94-EDGAR or visit edgarsnyder.com. They're available 24/7. Okay, Jason, let's get into it. Is Tuesday a red line for you as far as Aaron Rodgers is concerned? Is that where there begins to be some kind of negative impact by this drawn-out pursuit, even if we can debate how far that impact might go?
Yeah, I think there is. And I wouldn't call it a red line, Adam. I understand how some people might feel that way, but I think this is a part where there is negative impact. There's a clear hole. You're going to give opportunities to other guys. Do I need to see something out of Aaron Rodgers to feel like he can play quarterback at this level? No. I'm not going to learn anything from Football in Shorts about Aaron Rodgers. But what I do think this says is that there's some sort of commitment issue. Like, I don't know why we're not just being honest here. Like, if he's going to sign. If he's not going to sign, say so. I don't know why it's gone on this long. I don't know why. Shoot, at the owners' meetings, Adam, think back to what Art Rooney II said, that he was encouraged by where things stood. Thinks like they're going to have, an answer in a little while. They're not going to wait forever. They're waiting forever. They're waiting a long time. I don't understand why you wouldn't want this guy here at some point. Again, it's not about the football being played. It's not about what happens on the lines. It's about commitment. It's about what it says to the organization, to the fan base, to your teammates, that sort of thing. And the longer this goes, man, like you can shove it off to the side. If nobody's on the field, nobody's working. But the fact that they're on the field, they're working, they're doing something, I don't think this is a great look.
I'll offer a counterpoint, or a couple of counterpoints, Jason. Number one being that the Steelers have cut down their offseason plan for this year. They won't be doing as much in terms of OTAs. They seem to be one of the teams trying to push for the offseason program to kind of become more of a ramp up to training camp, in terms of the calendar, than kind of its own thing in May and June, get it closer to the start of camp in July. And B, I'd point out that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields had the full OTAs with this team last year. And come December, we saw that didn't matter and that they weren't good enough. So I guess, do you think the team sees it that way? Because it seems to me like they're sending signals that they maybe don't.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I mean, I'm just trying to come on here and give my opinion, what I think. If I would be in that locker room, I'd say, why don't you have to participate? If we're all here, we're all working, why aren't you? And I think it's natural, right? Like if it's in our industry, if there's somebody who's not doing something to the extent that the rest of us are, don't you look at that person and say, why aren't you doing that? Like the rest of us are pulling on this rope a certain way. You don't have to. And you can maybe look at it and say, well, Aaron Rodgers is special. He's a 4-time NFL MVP. He's got this career that the rest of us don't have. Okay, that's fair. But like recently, what have you done? I'd just like you here. I'd like you to be a part of things. I want you to want to be here because right now I'm on the fence about it. I don't know if they're discernibly better or worse with Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph. I think we're going to get into that a little bit. I know what Ben Roethlisberger said on his podcast. I feel a little bit different. I think either way, they're kind of in the same situation here. I mean, Maybe it's a little bit better with Aaron Rodgers, but Adam, I feel like at some point you have to show some desire to be part of this team. It's a team. And if you don't want to be part of it, that's okay too. But like, can somebody just admit that? Whether it's Aaron, whether it's Mike Tomlin, whether it's Art Rooney, I don't care. I don't know. It looks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. It flies like it's a duck. That was my best.
Well, yeah.
I don't know if that did anything.
I think you alluded well to, I mean, there's a national freak out about the prospect of Mason Rudolph being the quarterback of this team. I think what is Dan Orlovsky on ESPN said that they'll start 0-6, or he can see them starting 0-6. I wanted to ask you about that because Mason Rudolph won games like 2 years ago at the end of the season for this team. He engineered what I would argue might be the best playoff performance by the Steelers in the last 8 years since they've won a playoff game. In that game in Buffalo, I mean, listen, they weren't close, but they were closer in that game than they were in a lot of these other ones. Why is the rest of the country acting like this guy, is coming in from like a janitor's job or something?
I don't get it, man. Like, I understand to a point saying like, look, this is Aaron Rodgers. He's probably going to be a better option than Mason Rudolph. I think that's a fair assessment. But coming in from a janitor's job, I like the way you put that. That's good. Like, they're acting like Mason Rudolph has never played football before. I agree with you 100%. Like, he got the ball downfield. He made correct reads. He was able to take advantage of the Steelers playmakers. That's the most cohesive the Steelers offense has looked in a long time. I'm not saying it's going to work out, but I'm saying I'm okay taking a look. I'm not going to wait forever for Aaron Rodgers. And you know why I feel that way? Because the owner of the team felt that way. That's another thing that I don't understand about kind of what's happened here. Like, am I supposed to believe you? Because I think when Art Rooney II talks, he expects us to believe him. At this point, I don't know why I should. Like, the stuff that comes out of the guy, and I like Art a lot. It's not a criticism of Art. This is just black and white. Like, look, you said this. You said that you feel encouraged. You're not going to wait forever. Well, nothing has happened, and you're continuing to wait. You said a couple years ago you have faith in Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph, and we wind up with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. You said this offseason you want to sign Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, and you signed neither. You had the opportunity to sign both. Like, if you want us to believe you, you need to stay true to your word. And I don't know. That's a convoluted way of answering your question, Adam, but I don't see them as being discernibly different with Mason Rudolph versus Aaron Rodgers. I'd be absolutely fine with Mason Rudolph under center. You bring up a fantastic point about the playoff game, and I'd be fine rolling that way if Aaron Rodgers cannot give me an answer.
Regarding the credibility gap, Jason, I mean, is it possible that they just do not care whether we believe them or not? Because I think that was something that Chris Carter got into a lot during our draft coverage, is that they were sending up smoke signals about their intentions and you and I might be able to see through them as people who observe this team every single day. But it's very clear that the rest of the country did not see through the smoke screens, and that they had no interest in Shedeur Sanders, for example, after bringing him in. I think there's like a distinction that they make between the local media and the national media, and they must feel like they can bamboozle people who don't watch this team every day.
Yeah, I thought the Shedeur Sanders thing was more a media concoction than something the Steelers did. Like, I read Mike Tomlin's quote. I've watched Mike Tomlin say it. Like, I did not take that as him speaking glowing praise over Shedeur Sanders. And like, that's just who they have to take because of Mike Tomlin answering a question a certain way. Like, no, he was asked about a guy and he gave an answer. Like, yes, I understand he might have not answered that question in the past, but it's not like he gave some 5-minute diatribe. Yeah, I mean, they create things. All teams do. The Steelers aren't alone in trying to, play with the media or whatever. But I think ultimately, you hit on something important. Like, they don't care. And they shouldn't, right? Like, they should run their team the way they want to run their team. That's completely fair. If I was running a business, I would run it the way I want to run it too, not solicit the world's opinion on it. They should have stand true to their convictions. I'm just saying that, like, it's getting hard to believe Art when he says something, that they feel a certain way, and then they don't act on it.
Yeah. Jason, I know we also wanted to talk a little bit about the receivers. I think there's some debate percolating about the difference you're going to see between DK Metcalf and George Pickens.
Yeah.
I think some people see, tons of upside with DK Metcalf. I think other people question. You look at the statistical record. I'm doing this in my Pro Football Focus grades post, which will go up Friday morning on postgazette.com. On down the line, pretty much every statistic they're within hairs of each other. Granted, you're playing in different offenses. You're going to have different inputs this season compared to next season, but they profile as very similar players to me, Jason. And I don't know if I see DK Metcalf suddenly becoming that 1,300-yard guy again, especially when you have an unsettled quarterback situation and you haven't, maybe given him the chance to build that chemistry.
I disagree with you a little bit. I can see him going for 1,300. I could see him being utilized differently. The thing that I look at Pickens and how the Steelers, I don't think they took nearly as much advantage of him over the middle as they could have. There was a lot of like one-on-one down the sideline, let George make a play near the boundary, whatever, as there should have been. But whether it was Matt Canada, whether it was Arthur Smith, I don't think that was enough opportunity taken over the middle of the field. I always thought that was a part of George Pickens' skill set that plays really well. I think that's something that DK Metcalf can do too. One of the areas that concerns me, Adam, is not necessarily the skill set, comparing one or the other, because they both are very similar. And I like the physicality that DK Metcalf brings. I do like his deep ball capabilities, all that stuff, ability to run after the catch. Certainly not going to question that. What I will question is the depth of the group and how much attention defenses are going to be able to roll to DK Metcalf. I just think they're going to be like, unless they do something else, I do not see enough in the Steelers offense right now to not double cover DK Metcalf, to not, roll a safety over that way or just pay an inordinate amount of attention. Like there's too many questions surrounding Roman Wilson. There's too many questions surrounding Calvin Austin III or Robert Woods or whatever. Like I think they're one short right now. And if DK Metcalf would go down, I'd be really concerned about the Steelers receiver group. So, they're both extremely talented. I'd like to see them throw across the middle of DK Metcalf a little bit more. I think that's something that was underutilized with Pickens again. But I need to see them sign at least another wide receiver here. Maybe, I don't know, Gabe Davis, Amari Cooper, Alan Lazard, whatever. There's some options there. But I would like to see them fortify that group.
Well, I like what you're saying in theory, Jason. I guess I just don't believe that they're going to do it. I think Mike Tomlin has an aversion to the throwing over the middle. It's philosophical more than it is. I think the personality, like you said, and I guess that's why I question. What'd you say?
Like limiting turnovers? You think that's why they don't want to do it?
I think it's philosophical. And you had as close to a veteran quarterback as you can have in Russell Wilson, other than I guess Aaron Rodgers, and you still didn't feel comfortable doing that kind of stuff. So I guess that's where I question how different can those two players be over the long run. I think at some level it was more about getting rid of the headache that George Pickens presented and going out and getting a professional like DK Metcalf. But I don't think it's going to be a sea change in terms of the acquisition. I think it could have been if you kept both of them around, but now that you only have one, I think this offense is going to play fairly similarly.
I wish they would have kept them, Adam. I wish they would have kept those guys together. I'm kind of bummed they didn't.
Well, I think it goes back to what we talked about a couple of weeks ago is, how serious are they about this season versus 2026 and beyond, which leads it well into my next question, Jason, which is what is the biggest need that you think this team still has as we go, toward the offseason program and then training camp before too long? Is it still receiver because of what we were just talking about? And you've addressed the defensive line with a couple of guys. You've addressed running back with Kaleb Johnson. What are you looking at as the big weak points of this roster?
It is. Yeah, wide receiver is the weak point for me because I don't think they have the depth to overcome an injury. And trailing close behind, I think this is a sneaky storyline with the Steelers. Maybe we haven't talked about enough. Offensive line. With Dan Moore Jr. here last year, and there was a little, at least starting out with Troy Fautanu still there was a little bit more depth at tackle. Remember, there was a period where Broderick Jones theoretically wasn't starting, was rotating in. I know that was a very brief period. But what I'm saying is I would like to see the Steelers add a little bit of depth. Maybe that's a swing tackle type. Maybe that's a guard that in case something happens to Isaac Seumalo or Mason McCormick, he can step in. But again, I'm not moving off of wide receiver being the most under-addressed or the position that they need to address. I shouldn't say under-addressed because they did address it. I think that's the one where they have like one more move. It doesn't have to be huge. Again, just veteran receiver, a little bit more of a safe number two for me. But if they can add an offensive lineman on the cheap just to give themselves a little bit more depth, I'd feel a lot better. What about you?
Yeah, I think receiver's still the position, but it's also the position where it seems like they have some options. So I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm concerned yet, as long as some of these guys are out there. So we'll see how that unfolds. Jason, we're going to talk Penguins on the other side of this break, get into their coaching search and what Sidney Crosby's been doing at the World Championships. Before we do, we want to thank another sponsor. Are you looking for a way to challenge your body and sharpen your mind? Step into something more than just a workout. Welcome to the brand new Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy at UFC Gym. Here, it's not just about training. It's about living the values of honor, discipline, and respect. Whether you're a total beginner or leveling up your skills, you'll be guided through a structured program led by a third-degree black belt that builds confidence, strength, flexibility, and real technique. Head down to UFC Gym at the Waterfront or Market Square to learn about the exclusive three-month introductory package today. Also want to pass along a message from our friends in Bradenton, Florida.
Embrace the laid-back charm of island life while sinking your toes in the sand and discovering real, authentic Florida in the Bradenton area. Unspoiled beauty and pristine beaches, a vibrant waterfront downtown energized by local arts and culture, fresh Floridian cuisine with a flourish of rich history, and friendly locals ready to welcome you to this preserved paradise on Florida's Gulf Coast. Plan your visit today at BradentonGulfIslands.com.
We are back on the weekly chat with Jason Mackey, our Post-Gazette sports columnist. We are talking Penguins and their coaching search. Jason, you and I talked last week about Mitch Love, the Washington Capitals assistant, as a front runner to bringing a lot of things to the table. I know you wrote a column about him earlier this past week, since we've recorded. What more have you learned about him, and how does that shape your view of him as a candidate in this race?
Yeah. I love Mitch Love, Adam. It's a fun joke. We're going to have some fun with some puns, but in all seriousness, I mean, this is a great candidate for what the Penguins are trying to do. And why I love him? Well, he's been at different levels and his teams have won or responded to what he's been trying to do instantly. And I went into the column sort of telling it through his backstory. And this is a guy who's a fourth line winger, defenseman, just a guy's trying to hang on the roster. And he was a goon. He fought a lot. He's a tough guy. Did not have a lot of skill as a player, but hung around the American Hockey League. Anyway, gets started in the Western Hockey League, works his way up to the American Hockey League, and took over a couple teams and instantly saw a change in defensive structure, in responsible play, getting the attention of players. Now, I understand getting the attention of NHL players is a lot different than doing that in junior or in the minor leagues, but he's a two-time AHL Coach of the Year, was really good coming up through Calgary's system. A lot of people thought that he might get the Flames job. He did not. The Capitals made a really smart move to hire him, put him on Spencer Carberry's staff. And there's some links there. Spencer Carberry was a Toronto assistant. Kyle Dubas hired. Then he gets hired in Washington. Obviously, the Capitals do a lot of good things. Mitch Love is on his staff. He understands what they've done around Alex Ovechkin and sort of changing their team concept while also featuring a star. That's the model the Penguins should be following. They need a coach who can stand up to strong-willed veteran players who have been around for a while. That's one of the things Mike Sullivan did really, really well. And they need somebody to come in here and maybe jumpstart things a little bit sooner than people expect. I know the Penguins publicly are talking about, it would take a great feat to make the playoffs, all this stuff. You know what? That's the same sort of narrative and that same sort of idea that we were being fed before Mike Sullivan came along, and all of a sudden changed everybody's mind. And why I like Mitch Love is because he's been able to go into situations and suddenly change things, instill a more responsible brand of hockey. Look at the numbers of some of the teams that he's had. They're in the column. You don't have to look far for them. They've played a really good, sound, defensive style of hockey. That's what the Penguins need to do. They need to get tougher. They need to have more of an identity. It needs to be more defensive-oriented. I mean, this guy literally checks every box that they would want, Adam. I understand Kyle Dubas is doing his due diligence. I would expect sometime in the next 8, 9, 10 days, they announce a coach. But I very much like what I've been hearing and reading about Mitch Love. One of my favorite Penguin sources, I can't say the person's name, but I mean, this was the discussion. It was literally, why should I not be in love with this guy? Like, tell me what I'm missing here. And this person had the exact same thing. I mean, it's a common sentiment in hockey circles. I think this guy just has a lot of people think very highly of him. And I think the Penguins would do well to hire him.
Jason, you mentioned that there are some strong-willed players on this roster still. How long they're all going to be here is, I think, somewhat of an open question, or maybe it's not so much of an open question in terms of Evgeny Malkin. I think people expect this to be his last season. But how much of an input should those guys have in this decision, especially Sidney Crosby, who I think people hope has a little bit more longevity, might have another contract in him with the Penguins before he announces his retirement. Should he have input, or if he has input, why did they fire Mike Sullivan in the first place? I think that would be my natural question of, if they wanted to make Sidney Crosby happy with the coach hiring, they probably would have kept what was already in place.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it this way. Sidney Crosby should have input, but Sidney Crosby shouldn't be making the decisions. And those are different things. And I think Kyle Dubas recognizes that. I think he acknowledged that with the conversation he has with Sid. And I think, Sid has a policy. He doesn't do this a lot, but if he has something he wants to say, a message he wants to communicate, like, he's earned the right to communicate that message. That being said, Sid isn't the type. He's never going to do this. And this isn't the way it works, but he's not going to say to Kyle, hey, we should hire this guy. He's going to sit there and provide feedback, what he knows. Now, where I do think that Sid maybe has a unique perspective, and I think Kyle will lean on this as well. This is where Sid can help them frame things. You can look at it and say, look, so we have to get to something here. We have to form an identity to this team. What do you see? You're on the ice. These guys. How can we best achieve an identity that we're all playing together as one? With Mitch Love, I was talking about, defensive and being a little bit more responsible in your own end, that sort of stuff. And that's where I think Sid should have an input in carving out this team's identity, the types of players they can get, giving these 30,000-foot thoughts. And then you allow Kyle Dubas and his staff to execute them. And that can come down to signing specific free agents or building your team a certain way, what kind of coach you hire, what kind of system you implement, all of that stuff. I mean, Sid should obviously have a very big say in what the Penguins look like. I just, in terms of the actual faces, I think I'd be leaving that to Kyle Dubas. And Sid is, to be fair. He's not that type.
Jason, any thoughts on watching? I know you wrote a column about this as well. Watching Sidney Crosby and Marc-Andre Fleury at the IIHF World Championships. Yeah. It seems like a nice ending for Marc-Andre Fleury, and I'll speak personally. I think there are pangs of regret about that story not ending here in Pittsburgh. With Sid and Fleury together. And yeah, I think Fleury's career overall. Listen, I will always understand the decision they made to go with Matt Murray after that 2017. Stanley Cup to move on the way that they did. But you've had opportunities over that period of time to bring him back while you've had a very unsettled situation in net. Do you have any pangs of regret watching this as well?
I don't have any pangs of regret. I mean, I wish the Penguins would have brought back Fleury. I think it would have been a great story. I think there's been opportunities to do that, so I don't like that. I hate the expansion draft that it intervened the way it did. I'm with you, Adam. I don't have a problem with what they did. And I've defended that point of view to people, where they want to have this revisionist history and say the Penguins screwed up by committing to Matt Murray. They should have committed to Fleury. No, you're saying that because Matt Murray flamed out. Matt Murray couldn't stay healthy here or with Toronto, and he just hasn't been that good. And Fleury has endured, and Fleury is, first ballot Hall of Famer and all this stuff. I mean, the move at that time was to go with the younger guy who was a bigger part of your past two cup teams. I don't question it either. I just hate that it exists. It's not fair. Fleury should have finished his career here. He should have finished his career with Sid and Letang and Malkin. And it's just one of those things that ticks me off. It reminds you that pro sports is a business and things have to get done a certain way. I don't know. It's just regret is not the right way of putting it. I'm trying to think, just disappointed. It makes me sad, but it's happy to see them over there. I know how much this means to each of them individually. It's just not nearly as much as Fleury playing his final game at PPG Paints Arena, which he should have, even if it wasn't going to mean much, it would have been against Alex Ovechkin, and he and Sid, go off the ice. It should have been more storybook than it was.
Yeah, I agree. Don't blame them for the move, but certainly you can still dislike the way things ultimately ended. Jason, we're going to talk about the Pirates on the other side of this break. If you're on audio, if you're on video, head over to our Pirates YouTube channel for the third segment. We're going to be getting into Ben Cherington's future and the moves he may still have left to make while he is Pirates GM. Excited to dig into that conversation with Jason. So we will see you on the other side.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.